The waiter looked at me with that practiced sympathy reserved for losers dining alone on their birthday. Still waiting for your party, sir? I stared at the 7 empty chairs surrounding our usual table at Romano's Steakhouse, each one a monument to betrayal. My wife Sarah's chair, my daughters Emma and Lucy's spots, my brother Tom's place, my best friend since college, Jake, and his wife Michelle's seats, all empty. No, I said, forcing a smile that felt like broken glass. I think this is it. The waiter nodded awkwardly and retreated. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the messages that had arrived over the past hour, each one a perfectly crafted lie. Sarah. So sorry, honey. Emergency client meeting ran late. Rain check? Tom. Dude, car trouble. AAA says 2 hours minimum. Jake. Food poisoning hit hard. Michelle's taking care of me. Happy birthday, though. Even my own daughters had bailed. Emma claimed she had a last-minute study group for her senior year finals. Lucy said she forgot about a sleepover at her friend's house that had been planned for weeks. I laughed, actually laughed, sitting there alone in my best shirt and tie. The sound echoed off the empty chairs like a gunshot in a cemetery. You want to know the funny thing about betrayal? It doesn't announce itself with dramatic music and villain monologues. It creeps in through text messages and scheduling conflicts, through sudden emergencies and convenient forgetfulness. It wears the mask of everyday life until one day you're sitting alone at a table for 7, realizing that everyone you trusted has been lying to your face. My name is David Mitchell, and I'm 42 years old. I work as a senior project manager for a software development company, which means I spend my days organizing other people's messes and making sure deadlines get met. I'm good at reading between the lines, spotting inconsistencies, and tracking down problems before they explode. Skills that, as it turned out, were about to become very useful in my personal life. The waiter returned with my appetizer, calamari for 7 that I'd ordered optimistically 2 hours ago. Would you like me to box up the extra portions? Actually, I said, pulling out my phone again, let me try calling them one more time. But instead of calling my family, I opened the photo gallery and scrolled to the folder I'd labeled Home Security. 3 weeks of surveillance photos stared back at me. Sarah's car parked outside the Marriott downtown at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Jake's BMW in the same parking lot. Tom's truck there the following Thursday. All of them together at my father-in-law's house. Last weekend when they'd told me they were too busy to help me move furniture. The pieces had been falling into place for weeks, but I'd been too trusting, too stupid to see the picture they formed. Sarah's father, Richard Blackwood, had never liked me. Old money, old attitudes, and a firm belief that his precious daughter had married beneath her station. For 20 years, he'd been waiting for his chance to break us up and get Sarah back under his control. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard himself. David, we need to talk. Meet me at my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. It's about Sarah's future. I stared at the message, then at the empty chairs around me, then at the photos on my phone. Everything clicked into place with the precision of a well-designed software system. The late meetings that Sarah never wanted to discuss. Tom's sudden interest in family law. Jake's new evasiveness about our weekly golf games. Even my daughter's recent coldness made sense now. They weren't just avoiding my birthday dinner. They were avoiding me. I paid the check, left a generous tip for the waiter who'd watched my public humiliation, and walked out into the cool October evening. My reflection in the restaurant's windows looked like a ghost, pale, hollow-eyed, already fading away. But ghosts, I was about to learn, can be very dangerous when they decide to stop haunting and start hunting. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to my office and used my security card to get into the building after hours. The cleaning crew knew me. I'd worked late plenty of times before, so nobody questioned why I was there at 10 p.m. on my birthday. I had work to do. My computer skills weren't limited to project management. Before Sarah and the kids, before the suburban house and the minivan, I'd been a different person. I'd studied computer forensics in college, worked briefly for a private investigation firm, and learned how to dig up information that people thought they'd buried. I started with Sarah's social media accounts. She thought she was careful, but 20 years of marriage meant I knew her passwords, her security questions, and her patterns. What I found in her private messages made my stomach turn. Daddy says the lawyer found a way, she'd written to her sister 3 weeks ago. David won't fight it if we can prove he's unstable. Jake and Tom are helping document everything. Everything turned out to be a carefully constructed narrative of my supposed mental breakdown. Late nights at the office became obsessive work behavior. My recent quietness at family gatherings became antisocial tendencies. Even my birthday dinner tonight had been a setup. They'd planned to let me sit alone, then use my reaction as evidence of my instability. But they'd underestimated me. Instead of causing a scene or breaking down, I'd simply observed. I pulled up Tom's email account next. My brother had always been careless with technology, and he still used the same password he'd had since high school. What I found there was even worse than Sarah's betrayal. Richard Blackwood had offered him $50,000 to testify in divorce proceedings that I'd become increasingly paranoid and aggressive over the past year. Tom, who'd been struggling with his real estate business since the market downturn, had jumped at the chance. Jake's involvement was more personal. Screenshots of text messages revealed that he'd been feeding information to Richard about my daily routines, my work schedule, even my conversations with him. In return, Richard had promised to invest in Jake's consulting firm and help him land some major corporate clients. My best friend since college had sold me out for a business opportunity. The worst part was reading their group chat, Sarah, Tom, Jake, Michelle, and even Richard himself, all coordinating their lies like a military operation. They'd planned tonight's mass cancellation down to the minute, timing their excuses to arrive just as I was sitting down to dinner. David will probably just go home and sulk, Jake had written. He never fights back. Michelle had added, Sarah says he's been really passive lately. This should push him over the edge if we're lucky. They wanted me to have a breakdown. They needed me to lose control so they could use it against me in court. Richard's lawyer had apparently advised that a messy public incident would make the divorce proceedings much smoother for Sarah. I leaned back in my office chair and stared at the evidence spread across my monitors. Bank records showing payments from Richard to Tom and Jake, email chains detailing their surveillance of my activities, text messages mocking my trust and planning my downfall. They thought they were so clever, so careful. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd forgotten that I was very, very good at my job. I spent the rest of the night documenting everything, creating backups, and building a comprehensive file of their conspiracy. By sunrise, I had enough evidence to destroy all of them, legally, professionally, and socially. But I wasn't ready to play that card yet. First, I wanted to see how far they were willing to go. I drove home as the sun came up, parked in my driveway, and walked into the house like nothing had happened. Sarah was in the kitchen making coffee, still in her bathrobe. "Oh, honey," she said, turning to me with perfectly practiced concern. "I felt so terrible about missing dinner last night. The client meeting ran so late, and by the time I got free, I figured you'd already left the restaurant." I poured myself a cup of coffee and studied her face. She was good, I had to admit. The concerned expression, the apologetic tone, the way she reached out to touch my arm, it was a masterful performance. "It's okay," I said. "I understand. Work comes first." Relief flashed across her features. "You're so understanding, David. That's why I love you." The lie came so easily to her lips that I almost admired the skill involved. Almost. "Richard wants to meet with me this morning," I said casually. "Something about your future," he said. Sarah's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "Oh?" He didn't mention anything to me. Another lie. I'd seen the text messages where they'd coordinated this meeting, planned exactly what Richard would say, and how Sarah should react. "I'm sure it's nothing important," I said. "Probably just wants to discuss the girls' college funds or something." Sarah nodded, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Yes, probably that." I kissed her cheek and headed upstairs to shower and change. In the mirror, I looked like the same man who'd sat alone at that restaurant table 12 hours ago. But something fundamental had shifted inside me. They wanted to see me break. They wanted to push me over the edge. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Richard Blackwood's law office occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, all mahogany panels and leather-bound books designed to intimidate. I'd been there before for family occasions, but never as an adversary. The receptionist, a stern woman in her 50s, barely looked up when I announced myself. "Mr. Blackwood is waiting for you in conference room A," she said. "Down the hall, last door on your right." I walked down the corridor, my footsteps muffled by thick carpet, and found the conference room. Through the glass doors, I could see Richard sitting at the head of a long table, reading through a stack of documents. He looked up when I entered, his expression carefully neutral. "David, thank you for coming." "Richard," I took a seat across from him, noting the manila folders arranged on the table between us. "You said this was about Sarah's future." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with the calculating gaze that had made him millions in commercial real estate. "In a manner of speaking, yes. I think we both know that your marriage has run its course." "Do we?" "Come now, David. You're an intelligent man. Surely you've noticed that Sarah has been distant lately, unhappy." I nodded slowly. "She has seemed preoccupied. She's been coming to me for advice. As her father, I want what's best for her, and frankly, I don't think this marriage is working anymore." Richard opened one of the folders and slid a document across the table. "I've had my lawyers draw up a separation agreement. Very generous terms, considering. You'll keep your retirement accounts, your car, and receive a modest settlement. Sarah gets the house, primary custody of the girls, and most of the joint assets." I picked up the document and scanned it quickly. It was even worse than he'd described. I'd be left with almost nothing while Sarah got everything we'd built together over 20 years. "This seems rather one-sided," I said. "Perhaps. But the alternative could be much more unpleasant for everyone involved." He opened another folder and spread out a series of photographs and documents. "My investigator has been documenting some concerning behavior patterns, obsessive work habits, social isolation, increasing paranoia and aggression." The photos showed me leaving my office at various late hours, sitting alone at restaurants, walking by myself in the park. Innocent activities that had been reframed as evidence of mental instability. "I've also spoken with Tom and Jake," Richard continued. "They're both willing to testify about the changes they've observed in your behavior. Your brother's particularly concerned about your recent mood swings." I looked up from the photos. "Tom said that." "He's worried about you, David. We all are. This can be handled quietly, with dignity, or it can become a public spectacle that damages everyone, especially the girls. The choice is yours." I set the documents down and met his gaze. For a moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic 20 floors below. "You know what's funny, Richard?" I said finally. "I actually thought you might be calling to apologize." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Apologize? For missing my birthday dinner last night? I mean, your whole family was supposed to be there. Sarah, the girls, Tom, Jake, and Michelle. Even you were invited, though I didn't really expect you to show up." "I'm sure they had their reasons." "Oh, they did." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. "Very carefully coordinated reasons, actually." I opened the group chat screenshots I'd prepared and slid the phone across the table. Richard's face went pale as he read the messages from his co-conspirators, planning my public humiliation in detail. "You see, Richard, I may be a lot of things, but stupid isn't one of them. I've been watching, listening, documenting. I know about the payments to Tom and Jake. I know about the fake witness statements. I know about all of it." He pushed the phone back toward me, his composure cracking. "You can't prove—" "Actually, I can." I pulled out a flash drive and set it on the table between us. Well, bank records, email chains, text messages, recorded phone calls. 20 years in software development teaches you a lot about data recovery and digital forensics. Richard stared at the flash drive like it was a loaded weapon. "So here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to call off this little conspiracy of yours. Tom and Jake are going to stop spying on me. Sarah is going to start telling me the truth about what she wants, and you're going to stay out of my marriage. And if I refuse," I smiled, "then I release everything to the press. Prominent attorney orchestrates elaborate scheme to frame son-in-law. I imagine that would be quite damaging to your reputation and your firm. Richard's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake, David. I have resources you can't imagine. I can destroy you. You already tried. It didn't work. I stood up and pocketed the flash drive. Oh, and Richard, next time you want to have me followed, you might want to hire better investigators. The guy in the gray sedan was about as subtle as a heart attack. I walked toward the door, then paused and looked back. Tell Sarah I'll be home for dinner tonight, and this time, I expect the whole family to be there. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like a victory lap. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again, confident, in control, ready to fight for what was mine. But as I walked out into the bright morning sunshine, I realized that confronting Richard had been the easy part. Now I had to deal with the people who had betrayed me, not for money or business opportunities, but because they'd simply stopped caring about me altogether. That was going to hurt a lot more. I didn't go home immediately after leaving Richard's office. Instead, I drove to Jake's consulting firm, a small but prestigious outfit in the business district that specialized in corporate restructuring. I'd actually helped him get his first major client there 5 years ago, back when we were still real friends. The receptionist recognized me and waved me through to Jake's corner office without calling ahead. I found him on a conference call, gesturing animatedly at his computer screen while discussing quarterly projections with someone who was clearly important. He looked up when I walked in, and I saw the exact moment he realized that something had changed. The easy smile he'd been wearing faltered, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "Let me call you back," he said into his headset, then hung up and stood to greet me. "David!" "Hey, man, I was just thinking about you. How are you feeling? Michelle said you looked pretty rough when we saw you at the grocery store yesterday." Another lie. I hadn't been to the grocery store in 3 days. "I'm feeling much better, actually," I said, settling into the chair across from his desk, "especially after my meeting with Richard this morning." Jake's face went through several interesting color changes. Richard? Sarah's dad? What did he want? "Oh, just wanted to discuss some family business." Funny thing, though, he seemed to know an awful lot about my personal life, my work schedule, my habits, even some private conversations I thought I'd only had with close friends. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a screenshot of Jake's text messages with Richard. "Recognize this?" Jake leaned forward to read, and I watched his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard. "David, I can explain." "Can you?" Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my best friend has been spying on me for weeks, feeding information to a man who wants to destroy my marriage. It's not like that. Richard just wanted to help Sarah. Help her what? Steal my kids? Take everything I've worked for? Frame me as mentally unstable? Jake ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit I'd seen 1,000 times over our 20-year friendship. "Look, Sarah came to me months ago. She was unhappy, said you'd been distant and cold. She just wanted someone to talk to. So you decided to help her father build a case against me? I thought I thought maybe if you hit rock bottom, you'd get help. See a therapist, work on your marriage. I never meant for it to go this far." I stared at him across the desk. This man who'd been my best man at my wedding, who'd been there when both my daughters were born, who'd helped me move into 3 different houses, and had spent countless weekends at barbecues and birthday parties. "You never meant for it to go this far?" I repeated. "Jake, you helped them plan to leave me sitting alone at a restaurant on my birthday. You coordinated lies to make me think I was losing my mind. What exactly did you think was going to happen?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry, David. I really am. But Sarah was so unhappy, and Richard made it seem like this was the only way to help everyone." "Help everyone? Or help yourself to Richard's investment money?" Jake's head snapped up. "How did you—" "I know about the consulting contract he promised you. I know about the corporate clients he was going to introduce you to. I know about all of it, Jake." I stood up and walked to his office window, looking down at the busy street below. You know what the really pathetic part is? If Sarah had just come to me and said she was unhappy, we could have worked it out. Marriage counseling, therapy, whatever it took. But instead, you all decided I was the enemy. "David, please, let me make this right. I'll call Richard. Tell him I'm out. I'll talk to Sarah. Convince her to give you guys another chance." I turned back to face him. "It's too late for that." "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, I pulled out my phone and opened my email app. I've been busy this morning. Want to see what I've been working on? I showed him the screen. The email was addressed to the ethics board of his professional association, with copies to several major business publications and his biggest clients. Subject line: Consultant participates in elaborate personal vendetta against client's family member. I read aloud. The body includes all your text messages with Richard, bank records showing his payments to you, and a detailed timeline of your involvement in his scheme. Jake's face went white. You can't send that. It would ruin me. Like you tried to ruin me? That's different. We weren't trying to hurt your career, just my marriage, my relationship with my kids, my mental health, and my financial security. Much better. I put the phone back in my pocket. Here's what's going to happen, Jake. You're going to call Richard and tell him you're withdrawing from his little conspiracy. You're going to return any money he's paid you. And you're going to stay away from my family. And if I do that, you won't send the email? I didn't say that. Jake stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. David, we've been friends for 20 years. That has to count for something. You're right, I said, walking toward the door. It does count for something. It makes your betrayal so much worse. I left him sitting there and drove across town to Tom's real estate office. My brother was showing a young couple around a modest two-bedroom house, pointing out features and talking up the neighborhood. I waited in my car until they left, then followed Tom inside. David! He seemed genuinely happy to see me, which somehow made everything worse. What brings you by? Just wanted to chat with my brother, I said. You know, catch up on family stuff. Tom's office was smaller than Jake's, cluttered with listing sheets and property photos. A picture of our parents sat on his desk next to one of his own kids. We'd grown up in the same house, shared the same room until I left for college. He'd been my best man before I'd asked Jake to do it instead. How was your birthday dinner last night? He asked. Sorry I couldn't make it. That car trouble really screwed up my whole evening. Funny thing about that, I said, pulling out my phone again. I called the auto club this morning. No record of any service calls to your address last night. Tom's smile flickered. Maybe they have it under a different name. Tom, stop. I know about Richard's offer. $50,000 to testify against me in divorce proceedings. My brother's face crumpled like a deflated balloon. He sank into his desk chair and put his head in his hands. Jesus, David, how did you find out? Does it matter? I haven't taken the money yet. I was still thinking about it. You were thinking about whether to sell out your own brother? Tom looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Do you have any idea how bad things have been for me? The market's been terrible for 2 years. I'm behind on my mortgage, my kids need money for college, and Linda's been talking about going back to work because we can't make ends meet on what I'm bringing in. So, you decided to solve your money problems by destroying my life? Richard said it wouldn't really hurt you. Just a simple divorce, nothing complicated. He made it sound like Sarah was already planning to leave anyway, and this would just make things easier for everyone. I sat down across from him. Tom, do you remember when Dad had his heart attack 10 years ago? Of course. Do you remember who took care of everything? Who handled the hospital, the insurance, the funeral arrangements when he didn't make it? Tom nodded miserably. You did. And when Mom got sick 2 years later, who made sure she got the best care? Who paid for the treatments that insurance wouldn't cover? You did. And when your real estate business almost went under 5 years ago, who co-signed your loan to keep you afloat? You did. His voice was barely a whisper. So when Richard Blackwood offered you money to betray me, what exactly were you thinking? Tom was crying now, not bothering to hide it. I was thinking that I'm a failure, that I've never been as successful as you, never been as smart or as together. And here was this chance to finally get ahead, to take care of my family the way you've always taken care of yours. By destroying mine, I told myself it wouldn't really matter, that you'd bounce back, find someone better than Sarah, be happier in the long run. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Tom's small town was going about its daily business. People shopping, working, living their lives without the weight of betrayal crushing down on them. I'm not going to destroy you the way I could, I said without turning around. You're my brother, and despite everything, I still love you. But I want you to understand something. We're not family anymore. We're just two people who happen to share DNA. When I turned back, Tom was staring at me with a mixture of relief and devastation. I'll make it right, he said. I'll call Richard. Tell him I changed my mind. Do whatever you want. It doesn't matter anymore. I walked out of his office and drove home feeling strangely empty. I'd confronted the men who'd betrayed me, shown them the evidence of their conspiracy, and won. But victory felt hollow and it came at the cost of a 20-year friendship and the relationship with my only brother. The hardest conversation was still waiting for me. Sarah was in the kitchen when I got home, preparing what looked like an elaborate dinner. She'd changed into a dress I hadn't seen in months, and done her hair the way she used to when we were first married. The whole scene felt like a performance, carefully staged to manipulate my emotions. There you are, she said brightly. I've been cooking all afternoon. Your favorite pot roast with those little potatoes you like. I sat down at the kitchen table and watched her bustle around, opening wine and setting out the good china. Where are the girls? Emma's at study group and Lucy's at Madison's house. I thought it would be nice for us to have some alone time to talk. About what? Sarah paused in her dinner preparations and turned to face me. About us, David. About how we can fix things. What things need fixing? She sat down across from me, reaching for my hands. I know I've been distant lately. Work has been so stressful and I've been taking it out on you. That's not fair. I let her hold my hands while I studied her face. She was still beautiful at 41. Still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. But looking at her now, I realized I hadn't really seen her, the real her, in years. Sarah, I had an interesting conversation with your father this morning. Her grip on my hands tightened slightly. Oh, what about? He wanted me to sign divorce papers. Said you'd been coming to him for advice about our marriage. David, I can explain. He also had some photographs and witness statements, suggesting that I'm mentally unstable. Apparently, Tom and Jake have been documenting my erratic behavior. Sarah's face went through the same color changes I'd seen on Jake earlier. I never asked them to do that. Didn't you? I pulled my hands free and reached for my phone. Because I have some text messages that suggest otherwise. I showed her the group chat screenshots, watching her expression change from confusion to fear to resignation as she read her own words plotting against me. How did you get these? She whispered. And does it matter? Sarah pushed the phone away and stood up, pacing to the kitchen window. You don't understand, David. Things between us have been terrible for months. We barely talk anymore. We don't touch. We're like strangers living in the same house. So you decided to have me declared mentally incompetent rather than just asking for a divorce? It wasn't supposed to go that far. Daddy said if we could document some concerning behavior, it would make the divorce proceedings smoother. No one would get hurt, and we could both move on with our lives. No one would get hurt? I stood up and joined her at the window. Sarah, your father's plan would have left me with nothing. No house, no kids, no assets. How is that not getting hurt? She turned to face me, and for the first time in months, I saw real emotion in her eyes, instead of the careful mask she'd been wearing. Because I thought you didn't love me anymore, she said quietly. I thought you'd be relieved to be free of us. What made you think that? You work all the time. When you're home, you're distracted, distant. We haven't made love in 3 months, David. 3 months. When was the last time we had a real conversation about anything other than schedules and bills? I thought about it and realized she was right. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being husband and wife and become business partners, managing a household. So, instead of talking to me about it, you decided to conspire with your father to destroy me? I was scared, she admitted. Scared that if I told you how unhappy I was, you'd just shrug and say, okay, whatever you want, like you do with everything else. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you fought for anything in this marriage? When was the last time you showed any passion about us, about our life together? I wanted to argue, but the words stuck in my throat. She was right. I had become passive, disengaged, going through the motions of marriage without really being present. But that doesn't excuse what you did, I said finally. You could have asked for counseling, suggested a trial separation, anything. Instead, you tried to have me framed as mentally ill. Sarah's shoulders sagged. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, David. I let Daddy convince me that this was the only way. But I know it was wrong. We stood there in silence for a moment. 20 years of marriage hanging in the balance. Outside, our neighbors were living their normal lives, walking dogs, playing with children, existing in the kind of peaceful domesticity that we'd somehow lost along the way. Do you want to save this marriage? I asked. Sarah looked at me with tears in her eyes. Do you? It was a fair question. Did I want to fight for a relationship with someone who'd been willing to destroy me rather than simply ask for what she needed? Did I want to rebuild trust with a woman who'd conspired with her father and turned my friends against me? I don't know, I said honestly, but I know I want to try. If you're willing to be honest with me from now on, no more lies, no more manipulation, no more involving your father in our marriage. And if I agree to that, I pulled the flash drive out of my pocket and set it on the kitchen counter between us. Then this stays between us. I don't release the evidence to the press, I don't destroy your father's reputation, and I don't pursue criminal charges for conspiracy. Sarah stared at the small device like it contained a nuclear weapon. What about Tom and Jake? They're already out of our lives, permanently. The girls. We'll be told that Mommy and Daddy are working on their problems, and that sometimes adults make mistakes, but that we love them very much. Sarah picked up the flash drive and turned it over in her hands. What happens now? Now we start over. Marriage counseling, individual therapy, whatever it takes. But Sarah, I need you to understand something. This is your only chance. If you ever lie to me again, if you ever conspire against me again, if you ever involve your father in our marriage again, I will divorce you and I will take everything. Are we clear? She nodded, clutching the flash drive to her chest. We're clear. I walked over to the stove and lifted the lid on the pot roast. It smelled amazing, like the dinner she used to make when we were newlyweds, and still believed that love could conquer anything. This smells great, I said. Should we call the girls and ask them to come home for dinner? Sarah wiped her eyes and managed a small smile. I'll text them. As she reached for her phone, I realized that we'd just crossed a line that we could never uncross. Our marriage would never be the same. It would either be something entirely new and honest, or it would end. But either way, the lies were over. For the first time in months, that felt like progress.